Hi guys, it's Anand here. In this video, I'm going to talk to you about how I started a company and a business in Dubai in just 14 days. I'll talk about the steps I went through, how long it took me exactly, and what you need to learn. Let's jump right in. I've been looking at Dubai as a place to do business for some time now, and when I finally decided to set up shop in Dubai, I wanted to know what it took to open a company there, what the steps were, and how I could find out. I knew how all that kind of stuff worked in the UK, of course, having run my own companies here for about 15 years, but I knew Dubai wouldn't be the same, because it's a different city, in a different country, in a different continent, with different demographics and a different culture. You see, Dubai is mostly expat, but it's not a bunch of expats just from one region. In fact, Dubai is probably the most multicultural city I know, and therefore it stands to reason that it has to cater for and be understood by many different nationalities that choose to reside and do their business there. So firstly, let me dispel some rumours if you're thinking it will be similar to how it would be in the UK. You can't just go to a company's house equivalent, pay £12 and you're done. You need a lot more consideration and planning. And to be honest, if you're opening a company or a business anywhere, then that kind of goes without saying. You don't just get out your credit card, open a company and think, yeah, I can get into business. There's a lot more to it. But I'm going to assume that you know all that already. The main thing I found is that there's a lot of conflicting information out there on how to incorporate a company. And when hearing from others on how they've done it, those experiences can differ quite a lot as well. Much of this comes from the fact that the Dubai regulatory system is constantly shifting. It is improving all the time. You get a feeling throughout much of the Emirate that they are very fast to implement new ways of working. They learn what is and isn't working and pivot, change and improve all the time. The machinery of government in Dubai seems to be very efficient, at least as efficient that any government anywhere in the world can be. But it seems to move very fast and get better all the time. The reality is, if you're talking to anyone that's opened a company there in the last 10 years, or even the last 5 years, your experience in opening up shop there is likely to be very different. And this is because the regulatory environment is changing. You're not moving mountains with entrenched institutions and unnecessary archaic decision-making processes. The whole system hasn't really grown organically. It's been planned and developed in a way that suits the needs of the Emirate, its residents and its businesses. I've been going back and forth to Dubai for the last 15 plus years, and I've seen it shift a lot over that period of time. And I know full well that when they decide to make a change, that change happens fast. So I wanted to open a business in Dubai. The typical questions and comments I heard: do I open a company in a free zone? If so, which free zone? Or do I open one on the mainland? What are the visa implications of each? It takes ages to open a company. It isn't that straightforward. It depends if you've got advisors working with you and how good they are. Be careful about doing it right, otherwise you could get into trouble and you might even have trouble opening a business bank account. And your business bank account can get frozen if you don't do things in the right way. There are multiple steps involved and you can get charged at each point. Be careful in future-proofing your business. You might get a company opened, but if you want to make any changes to it, you'll get charged through the roof later on. There are a number of business or company formation companies out there, and whilst each technically is playing from the same rule book, they typically all give you inconsistent information from each other. Now, of course, the process is one, but the way they all articulate it is different. And so what you end up finding, and certainly what I found, is that 90% of what all of them said was the same. But that 10% actually caused a lot of confusion. And I actually spoke to about 4 or 5 of these before I chose the firm I ultimately ended up with. And I found a lot of these for company formation types started getting quite annoyed after I continued asking questions about the process, which almost universally weren't very clear on the first explanation. It's almost as if they wanted me to sign up immediately after they'd made their pitch. And any questions I had were simply keeping them from their next prospective client. Because there's a lot of growth in Dubai in the number of people going to live there and the number of companies and businesses shifting their operations there. So many people coming to them to start up shop in Dubai or relocate to the UAE that they needed to move fast between prospective customers to just keep up pace with the level of business that they were expecting to do. Some advisors couldn't even explain the process beyond the script that they'd obviously been given, or beyond a PDF proposal that they'd sent you. That is until I found a very friendly and personable firm that let me take as much time as I needed to fully understand the process and get explanations for things that were difficult to put a timeline on. So let's jump into a couple of key questions. What is the process to open a company up in Dubai? What are those steps in order? And how long does each of those steps take? Now that third one is a bit of a difficult question to answer because there is no set time frame, only indicative ones. And a hold up in one of those steps can actually impact the other because not all of them can run in parallel. A lot of them actually run sequentially. Just a quick aside, if you want to see more videos like this one and about money stuff in particular, then make sure you've subscribed. And then lastly, I'll talk about other things I think you need to know that could help you on your journey to opening that business in Dubai. I'm going to go through what I've been through. Depending on the type of business you are thinking about opening and whether you have a company formation specialist working alongside you, some of these steps can take longer or be subject to more due diligence from the regulatory authorities in the UAE. For example, if you're thinking about opening a financial services company or a pharmaceutical firm. So the first step is to identify the type of company you want to open and I went through the same process. For me, it was one type, but for you, it could be another. I've included a link in the show notes to the full category list as it stands today. Once that's done, you decide on your company. After that comes your company name. And whilst you can check for company name availability yourself, I used a company formation specialist to do this for me. Now, I mentioned earlier that opening a company or incorporating a company in the UK can start at just £12. But in Dubai, it is a lot more expensive. Incorporating a company in Dubai can cost anything from £3,000 up to £12,000. It cost me just shy of 7k. So that's registering the company, but that's just the start. Think about what you need when you're actually running a business. Incorporating a company gets you the name, a trading license to operate, and your name as the owner. But where do you expect to keep your money once you start making it? And where do you expect to make business expenses from? So if you're incorporating a company, unless you're up to something nefarious or creatively non-nefarious, then you're going to want a business bank account. Now you're probably thinking, well, thanks for that, Anand, that's some really great insight there. Of course I need a business bank account. Well, yes, of course you do. But simply by having a company in Dubai doesn't automatically make you eligible for opening a business bank account in that company's name. To open a bank account in the UAE, either personally or for your business, you need to have an Emirates ID card. And you can't get an Emirates ID card without having a residence visa. You don't actually need to be a resident in Dubai or the UAE to obtain a residence visa. But the residence visa does, of course, give you permission to live there if you choose to do so. For the purposes of this video, all you need to know is you need a residence visa in order to get an Emirates ID card, which then leads you to your business bank account. And the steps to obtaining your residence visa is to take a medical and submit your biometrics. On the basis of all that, you can then be granted an Emirates ID card, which for those people from the UK looks a bit like your UK driving license. When I was doing all the research on how to open a company in Dubai, I spoke to quite a lot of people. Some who had done it themselves recently, some more than a few years ago, and also, as I said before, company formation services. All of them conveyed the key steps in their own way. And whilst there was commonality, of course, as you'd expect, some mentioned things, some didn't, some considered it not important to mention some other things, some broke down what those charges included, some didn't, etc, etc. It was quite a confusing process, and so I did what I do. I asked questions upon questions upon questions, until I could articulate the process and my advisor agreed in the way I interpreted it. For me, that way I understood the process in full, I knew the various steps involved, what I would see after each step, which steps ran concurrently, and which steps had to run one after the other. One of the reasons this was so important to me was that I knew as part of the process to open a company up in Dubai, it was easier for some parts of it to be present in Dubai at that time. And because of this, I wanted to know how long I actually needed to be in Dubai for. Was a week going to be enough? Or 2? Or more? Okay, back to the process. If you plan on being the sole owner of your company in Dubai, then your original passport will be required when in Dubai, so an application for an establishment card can be made. This establishment card, which comes with a green background, is then used to apply for your residence visa. You should receive both, and especially your residence visa, in PDF form. And whilst previously people may have needed a stamp in their passport to confirm their residence visa, it's all done digitally these days and is linked to your eventual Emirates ID card. So you don't need that stamp in your passport any longer. If you'd entered Dubai as a tourist, then your status is changed to being a resident on the basis of your newly acquired residence visa. Again, this doesn't mean you have to move your home to Dubai. You don't have to stay there any longer than you want to. And contrary to some questions I get asked, it has nothing to do with your citizenship status. Citizenship and residency are two different things. Now, as it stands today, if you've got a residence visa as an investor, then you need to make sure you're in Dubai at least once every 12 months to keep that residence visa active. But of course that could change over time, so please do check how often you need to be in country to keep that visa active. Now, once that part is done and you've received your pink colored PDF, the next stage is to book in your medical and your biometrics. The medical essentially involves a blood test. You go to a government building, which if it's anything like the one I went to, looks very unassuming from the outside, but once you enter, you find it a very customer-oriented experience. When I walked in, I was greeted by one of their staff and asked to hand over my ID documents. Now I was lucky, I had my advisor with me who had all my documents ready to submit. And in this case, I believe it was just my passport for identification. My details were then pulled up on a large digital screen, and after confirming a few details, I was asked to take a seat in the waiting area. I figured I'd be waiting about half an hour given the number of people that were in there. But within 10 minutes, my name showed up on a list of people that were to be called next. And in another 5, I was called to a small booth. And in less than another 5 minutes, a blood sample was taken by a medical professional, and I was out. As I said before, the whole thing was very efficient. The next step was to book in a date for my biometrics. When people talked about biometrics, I envisaged a full body scan, iris scans, fingerprints, and the like. But I think this was a sign that I just watched too much sci-fi. In reality, it was simply a fingerprint scan. I was driven to a centre, another government building, where bookings, as it happened, were available much sooner than the ones that were closer to where I was staying. It was about a 45-minute drive from where I was staying, which in Dubai terms is a hell of a commute. On arrival, I was so glad I had my advisor with me, as he clearly knew his way around. It was like I was receiving a VIP experience. I was ushered past large crowds and into a waiting room, which could have catered for up to 50 people, except there was only 4, including me, waiting. The process, again, like the medical, was super smooth and efficient. Prints were taken, and that's it, I was done, ready for my 45-minute return journey. And that's effectively it, I was done. Now began the wait for my Emirates ID card, the one primary item I needed to open my business bank account. From everything I'd heard up until this point, it shouldn't have arrived as quick as it did. I was told it would take me about 2 weeks to receive my Emirates ID card. But just 4 days later, it arrived and I was ecstatic. So now I had the one main thing I needed to open my business bank account. But of course, that's not the end of the story. Now I had my Emirates ID card, I could start the process of opening my business bank account. My Dubai company is a mainland company. And to open a business bank account for a mainland company, you need 3 things. Your Emirates ID card, of course, a business address, which for me came from a rental contract, or what is called an Ajari. My advisors took care of this one for me. And number 3, a UAE phone number. You'll need this for OTP codes sent to you from your bank. And that mobile number will also be linked to your Emirates ID card. From there, the process is pretty straightforward and just like opening an account elsewhere. For a company account, of course, I needed to provide the usual business type things. For example, I provided the names and addresses of a few business clients. I provided 3 of mine, business plan particulars, recent company bank statements from your country of origin. So I provided some statements from my UK company accounts, a photograph, a signature, and usual KYC, know your customer, AML, anti-money laundering documentation. My advisors were on hand throughout and for that local touch. They were simply fantastic, and without them, this process would have taken me a lot longer to conclude. From start to finish, this was the timeline. I handed over my passport, applied for my establishment card, and obtained my residence visa on day 1. I had a medical booked the same day, on day 1, although I'm told this is not typical. Then came my biometrics appointment, or really just my fingerprints appointment. Now this of course depends on availability. I received my appointment a week after I'd done my medical, so day 8. My Emirates ID then arrived on day 10. For the opening of the bank account, it took me just 4 days, from beginning the application online to confirmation of the account being open and initial funds being deposited. So that's it, end to end, my company in Dubai was open and I was ready for business. Before we wrap up here, I wanted to share a few top tips. When I was going to get my medical, I was told to wear covered footwear, so no flip-flops or sandals, and to wear trousers or jeans, no shorts. I was told this by a few friends who have been through the process. I have no idea how true those are, but I have heard stories about them not being permitted. I just complied. I was tight on time and these were hardly contentious issues. For your residence visa, you'll need a photograph, so make sure you get one done at a local studio, or you can provide a digital photograph as well. Just make sure you know what the rules are before you do so. So that was tip number 1, now tip number 2. If you're using business advisors, and I'd highly recommend it, ask them to send you someone to accompany you for your medical, for your biometrics, for your application for your residence visa and establishment card. Trust me, you'll find it invaluable. Tip number 3, if you've got limited time in the UAE, make sure your business advisors know this and keep in constant contact with them through WhatsApp messaging. Remember, WhatsApp calling doesn't work in Dubai, so WhatsApp messaging is your friend. Ideally, maximize the number of weekdays you are in country. As like elsewhere, you can't expect much progress to happen over the weekend in these sorts of company setup services. Tip number 4, ask your business advisor to get your medical booked in on your first or second day in country. Tip number 5, if you're struggling to get availability for any of your bookings, such as your medical or your biometrics, ask your business advisors to consider somewhere a bit further afield. Tip number 6, and this is a big one, patience. Have patience. The process is getting better all the time, but the process is the process, and yours, like mine, will run its course. Know that much of the process is outside of your business advisor's hands. Some business advisors aren't great at communicating this, and I know quite a few people who have been told a particular timescale plan their entire journey to the UAE around this, and other things around this. And if you do that, you're taking a bit of a risk. Do remember that these business advisors try and cater for many different types of business people from all over the world. Tip number 7, some company formation services will try and lump lots of different costs on you, which aren't all necessary for company formation. You may in fact want some of these services, but equally you may not. Just try and familiarize yourself with what you actually need for company formation, and then make a conscious decision on whether you want some of those extra services that are being charged for. These optionals can include medical insurance, getting a PO box address, needing a local service agent. Tip number 8, and the final one for now, be sure to be clear about all the steps in your process before you get started. The sequencing and timelines will always be forecast to a degree, so go with that in mind. And if you can, try and make your return journey back home flexible so that you can move dates around if needed. I hope you've picked up some useful insights on this video. If you genuinely have, please hit the like button so that this video can reach more people, and don't forget to subscribe for more. Good luck with your Dubai business, and I'll see you on the next one.